This is a song I wrote yesterday, and it's about a girl who's just different.
Taylor Swift knew she was different, long before she became the biggest pop star of her generation. She felt the effects of being an outsider from an early age, even if she never really knew why. As a growing number of Taylor's neurodivergent fans have noticed, especially the autistic ones, she seems to have a lot in common with, well, autistic people. Taylor's striking and persistent, quirky traits align strongly with the evolving understanding of autism, which psychologists are finding to be much more widespread and nuanced than previously thought.
Taylor Swift fits the autism criteria.
And there's a reason why so many autistic people are Swifties. And it's because they see themselves in her.
I know that I've belonged to ADHD and autism communities for a really long time, and this has been a topic that has come up a lot. Neurodivergent communities do tend to be pretty accurate at recognizing other people that are part of the community but haven't come out about it.
Listen, Taylor is the biggest star in the universe right now, and she represents autistic culture. If we are not like waving the flag, the biggest star in the world is from Autistica.
Yeah.
We have to celebrate this.
Welcome to Neurospicy, a channel where we'll dive into all kinds of topics in neurodiversity. I'm Aaron, your neurodivergent host. If you're not familiar with the term, neurodivergent is most often used to refer to autism and ADHD, but it can include a lot of different ways brains can be wired. It's part of the neurodiversity movement to reframe psychological differences traditionally seen as pathologies or deficits. Instead, it's about understanding and accepting them as different ways of processing and being in the world that are just as legitimate as the neurotypical majorities, with just as many pros and cons. Neurospicy is another way some of us neurodivergent folks like to say, hey, our brains work in some different, flavorful ways. And Taylor Swift does seem to have a flavor of neurospiciness that's part of who she is, and the talents that have helped her stand out and become the cultural force that she is. The inspiration to choose Taylor as the subject of this first Neurospicy video came from an episode of the Autistic Culture podcast, released last year. On the podcast, the autistic hosts talk about and celebrate influential people, past and present, who are known to be autistic or just give strong autistic vibes.
Each episode, we dive deep into the autistic contributions to society and culture by introducing you to some of the world's most famous and successful autistics in history.
George Lucas and everybody at ILM has autistic traits.
Charles Schultz, Steve Jobs.
All sorts of very impressive people are autistic, and they've created these major contributions.
One of their subjects was the poet Emily Dickinson, who, as it turns out, is related to Taylor Swift. And one openly autistic, influential musician the podcast hasn't covered yet is David Byrne of Talking Heads.
Are you ever diagnosed as being on the spectrum?
No.
You just figure you are?
I just figured it out. Yeah.
One openly autistic TV writer and producer, discussed multiple times on the podcast, is Dan Harmon, who created the hugely popular shows Community and Rick and Morty.
Is this game popular with autistic people? Why would you say something like that? Because I'm starting to love it.
So what's the point of name-dropping all these famous autistic people and characters? It's to show that the picture of what autistic people look like, how many people in our society are autistic, the scope of autistic people's abilities, and how much autism is already part of our everyday culture may be very different than you think. The idea that yes, even someone like Taylor Swift can be autistic is a revolutionary contradiction of the narrow, harmful, stereotypical views of autism that dominate in our culture. And that evolving understanding of autism is being reflected more and more in the research.
I think there's greater awareness of autism than any time during the 30-odd decades that I've been working in the area. The picture, the autistic population has really changed. When I started in the field, most autistic children were in special school. Many or most had intellectual disability, language difficulties, and we were really fighting a lot of underdiagnosis. Now, most autistic children are in mainstream school. Most will have pretty good intellectual functioning and serviceable or good or excellent language. The big increase has been in first diagnosis in adulthood and in women and girls rather than in men and boys. They don't think we're overdiagnosing autism. Instead, we're catching up on people who have historically been missed.
Autism is so multifaceted that it's really hard to sum up. And of course, most people's understanding of autism is just those really tired, white boy obsessed with trains stereotypes.
The more we learn about what autism really is, and the more we learn about how people who are not young white cisgender boys express autistic traits, they're all a very, very different expression of the same thing. One of my biggest problems with people who diagnose autism is that there are so many people out there who are working on outdated beliefs, like beliefs that we don't have empathy, that we can't make eye contact. There was one woman who paid a ridiculous amount of money and did 16 hours of testing and ended up, and the evaluator said, well, you've got some autistic traits, but you made eye contact and you wore makeup and you can drive a car, so you can't possibly be autistic.
Scottish comedian Fern Brady was diagnosed as autistic at age 34 in 2021 and wrote about it in her book, Strong Female Character.
I put complete faith in doctors, whereas I now know that lots of doctors and lots of psychiatrists know nothing about autism. They don't even get trained in how to recognise it. I had a GP tell me that autism is extreme maleness. That's in 2023.
So what is autism? That's a big question, but one way to describe it is as a constellation of traits that can be expressed in a complex variety of ways. That's why it's called the spectrum. Not every autistic person has every autistic trait, and we'll unpack how they show up in Taylor. But here are some of the most universal autistic traits in a nutshell. We have sensory sensitivities, which means our experiences of food, light, sound, touch, and everything else are more intense, for better or worse. We tend to prefer direct communication. We're often known for being blunt and having no filter.
I don't know if we've ever hugged each other.
I don't like to be touched, but I'll allow it today. This is mostly for you.
I know.
We have intense interests, which means we dive deeply into the things that tickle our brains, and we love to talk about them, or info dump. We stim. Stimming is something all people usually do in some form or another. It could be anything from tapping fingers to humming, or even looking at pleasant colors and patterns like the galaxy lamp behind me. But autistic people tend to stim more often to help us regulate our emotions, focus, or even express joy in ways that might not fit within the social norm. We tend to have a more monotone speech pattern, even when expressing excitement.
So excited. This is the main event.
We tend to really pay attention to the details because we can't help but notice them. And we often want to understand how things work in clear, logical systems. This might mean we notice more patterns or ask a lot more why questions to see how the whole picture fits together. And living in a neurotypical dominated world that's not designed for us, we tend to need more routine and predictability to manage the chaos. We don't have time to cover the whole range of autistic traits, some of which are just the results of not getting our needs met in that chaotic world. But at its core, autism seems to be rooted in one fundamental difference in the way our brains are wired.
The best way to sum up what autism is that I've found is thinking of autism as largely being guided by bottom-up processing, interpreting the world in a very piecemeal, bottom-up fashion, whereas most non-autistic people or allistics experience the world in more of a top-down fashion. So what does that mean? The easiest to understand example of that, I think, is sensory issues. Autistic people appear to be very sensitive to sound and smells and textures and all of this kind of sensory input. Autistic people don't filter out noise, junk data, junk sensory information as easily as allistic people do. And so it's extremely exhausting to filter and to make sense of. And that's true of basically everything that autistic people are trying to make sense of in the world, whether it's nonverbal cues, whether it's just learning to navigate a new unfamiliar surrounding. Everything is just bottom up for us, and that is why we tend to find, situations hard to read, social situations exhausting.
Basically, our brains process all input from our environment, sensory, intellectual, all kinds of information equally, without a filter, and piece together the components through our own unique lens. On the other hand, allistics, or top-down processors, the majority of people, see the big picture first and get to the details after. This is why autistics naturally tend to stand out and think outside the box. It's also why, even if many of us can learn to mask and blend in by adapting to neurotypical social norms, they may not come naturally to us, and it comes at a cost to our well-being. And if we don't know we're autistic, we may not even realize we're masking.
To give you an idea of what it feels like to be on the spectrum, basically it feels like being the only sober person in a room full of drunks. Or the other way around. Basically, everyone is operating on a wavelength you can't quite key into.
More people are coming to see autism as a neurotype, a different type of brain, with strengths, challenges, and huge diversity in the ways it shows up. And that those challenges largely stem from a lack of understanding, acceptance, and legitimization of autistic needs and ways of being in a society dominated by an allistic majority.
Autism is simply a different way of thinking and seeing and interacting with one's world. I view autism as realness.
But the prevailing view among medical professionals and researchers is still to treat autism as a disorder, a pathology that needs to be fixed, perpetuating the social stigmas around it.
Because there's a lot of autistic people being pathologized and we're told we're disordered, but there's not enough talk of how weird neurotypicals are. So quite often when
I'm not touching that thing. I'll get neurotypical cooties. I have son-in-laws more imaginative.
You guys can't get the balance right. It's always either a tragedy or you have to say it's a superpower, and I wish people just viewed it with a bit more neutrality, because you need to see it as a different operating system, like iPhones versus Androids.
But that is the best way of putting it I've ever heard.
Oh, I mean, a lot of autistic people say that.
That autistic operating system, with its bottom-up processing, comes with its advantages, like an eye for detail.
On average, most autistic people have a better eye for detail than the rest of us. Sometimes that eye for detail makes it hard to get the big picture, to understand the gist.
It's a great gift, actually. Obsessiveness about the details, and I will work on the script, and I learn every single line.
As big fans of details, we autistics love a good Easter egg. We love to build and explore worlds and find all the hidden clues a creator leaves for their fans to find. And that brings us back to perhaps the master of Easter eggs, Taylor Swift.
Success at this scale isn't just about the music, it's also about the unique way Taylor engages her fans, through secret messages planted in her albums, music videos, interviews, and social media. All of this has contributed to her pop stardom and world domination.
Taylor Swift cinematic universe tells a unified narrative of a woman navigating her place in the world. It's a universe full of recurring characters. Episodes pick up one after another, narrative threads resolve albums later.
Taylor plants Easter eggs to tease upcoming announcements, hint at which ex-boyfriend the song is about, and connect themes across her songwriting and other work. She's widely lauded for her attention to detail, whether it be in the levels of meaning packed into her lyrics or in the music videos and tour productions she directs.
I wrote a book and then I put an Easter egg on the book, which is fun. You get something about getting here puts more pressure on you to put details into what you're doing.
I think the first time that I started dropping sort of cryptic clues and things in my music was when I was 14 and 15 putting together my first album. When I was a kid, I used to leaf through CD booklets and just read the teeny tiny print.
Yeah.
And just obsess over it.
This aspect of her work is a huge part of the appeal that sets her apart from the rest.
Taylor Swift is coded specifically for the superfan. The reason autistics gravitate to it is she is a world builder. She built the universe, she embeds Easter eggs throughout, and it is a big puzzle or mystery that makes you feel like an insider.
Because when you know all the trivia and you know all the details, it's speaking to you specifically, not the general audience.
Throughout her career, Taylor has had two specific themes she's loved to reference over and over. These look a lot like autistic special interests, also known as intense interests or hyperfixations. Autistic brains tend to have monotropic focus, where they latch on to particular things that somehow excite us like nothing else. When we get into things, we get really into them. We can't help but think about these passions and look for patterns related to them, and it's actually important to our health to be able to engage with them. They might stick with us for a few weeks or for a lifetime, and Taylor definitely has a couple of those lifetime ones.
Those things are 13s and cats. If you see a cat in symbolism in my Easter egg situation, that's just because I love cats. It's that simple. Sometimes it means nothing other than just reminding you how much I love cats. Also, the number 13, really close to my heart. I will pick dates. I'll pick really important dates
just because the numbers of that date add up to 13. It rules my life. So, you know, any Easter egg fiend has their go-tos. Those are mine.
There are probably hours of footage we could show of her referencing the number 13 in Cats. But let's first talk a bit about 13.
13 has been my lucky number for a while. Like, it's always a sign of good things to come for me. I was born on the 13th. I turned 13 on Friday the 13th. My first album went gold in 13 weeks. Also, thanks. My first song that ever went number one, it had a 13-second intro. And I didn't even do that on purpose.
13 for Taylor is clearly a hyperfixation for her pattern-matching brain, and obviously what many would simply call a superstition. But on a deeper level, it seems to be a coping mechanism.
When you have expectation sensitivity and you don't know you're autistic and you haven't had autistic-centered therapy, you would be looking for stories like that. I mean, girl, if it works for you.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do to manage the chaos in the world. So if 13 protects you from the chaos, then may 13 protect you from the chaos.
As for cats, well, Taylor's love for cats is definitely not neurotypical. It's a pretty textbook example of an autistic special interest that she loves to display prominently and info dump about.
I have cats. I'm obsessed with them.
Look at my cat. Look at it. Look at it. Look at this cat. Look at it. Look at my cat. Look at my cat. Look.
Cats can be found in her songwriting, music videos, and even multiple TV ads she's done.
Taylor, you've been a bad human.
Yeah, very bad.
Oh no.
So bad that you... Look what you made me do.
She usually features her 3 actual cats, which are named after fictional characters she feels strongly connected to, which autistics often do. She talks about them as a comfort she can fall back on during tough times, which both pets and special interests often are. But for Taylor, it goes beyond the simple joys and comforts of pet ownership.
How many cat breeds can you name in 10 seconds?
When do we start?
On your mark, get set, go.
Scottish Fold, Ragdoll, Ragamuffin, Maine Coon, British short hair, exotic short hair, American short hair, Munchkin, Siamese, the
Time's up.
Just adopt cats. And then if you're lonely, then adopt another one. And then if just keep it up.
I love my cats so much that when a role came up in a movie called Cats, I just thought, like, I've got to do this. Like, this is my calling in life to do this for the ladies.
Like, I really bring the cat vibes with me. You can't spell cats without TS.
And in true autistic fashion, this passion seems to be such an essential part of Taylor's authentic identity, she simply can't compromise on expressing it.
A lot of other publicists, like mine is chill right now. She's really calm, but like a lot of them, we would walk off and she'd be like, you need to take out the cat jokes because that makes Taylor sound weird. And it's like, well, I am weird.
Another key autistic trait Taylor has shown is the tendency to have go-to safe foods. We tend to eat the same things a lot, over and over. This comes from a combination of our sensitivity to food textures, tastes, and such, and our need for predictability.
Why would anybody ever eat anything besides breakfast food?
People are idiots, Leslie.
In so many ways, when we know what we like, what works for us, we tend to stick to it. And these habits can seem odd to neurotypicals.
Food I could eat every day. It changes. I go through phases where like I have a favorite thing. Like for a while it was Cracker Barrel, and I would go and get biscuits and apple butter and breakfast no matter what time of day it was. And now it's like Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal. I'm completely obsessed with it. Constantly looking up restaurants on my phone and like looking at the menus, and it's like a recent obsession of mine. Standard chain restaurants that you can get everywhere because they're consistent, because you know what you're gonna get, right? Yeah.
For whatever reason, a classic go-to for autistics is chicken nuggets.
I'm an autistic parent. Of course I got 15 bags of chicken nuggets in my freezer. And what you gonna say about it?
The Autistic Culture podcast episode on safe foods is even named after this.
I was a real drama queen about eating healthy food when I was little. Like when I was a little kid, my mom would try to make me eat all this stuff and I'd be like, I can't do it, Mom. I have a gag reflex. And I think I did have a gag reflex for stuff like applesauce, and like if the texture's wrong, then I was never able to eat it. But yeah, for like a 4-year period, all I would eat was chicken nuggets and French fries.
Oh my God! So I wonder if she knows the label "Sane Foods" and "Safe Foods."
I mean, should we tell her?
Wow. I think somebody should tell her. He's a member of the Chicken Nugget Club.
I was
Wow.
like, is she autistic? Who knows? No one will ever know.
Just makes me so happy, and whenever I talk about it, I do like weird stuff with my hands.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Taylor can also often be seen stimming in her on-camera appearances, even her earliest ones. As we touched on, stimming is any kind of self-stimulatory behavior, which can include proprioceptive spinning, shaking your head, or rocking, and even vocal stims. When expressing excitement, one of the most stereotypical and stigmatized autistic stims is hand flapping, which many of us may be socially shamed out of doing at an early age. Instead, we might find more subtle, neurotypically acceptable outlets for these urges. Taylor's go-to stim is finger squeezing, especially in on-camera interviews and at big, loud events like award shows. Behaviors like these help autistics keep themselves regulated, but they're often misunderstood.
What's one habit you wish you could break?
Well, when I'm sitting there, usually I just do this with my leg, like, and people think that I'm nervous, and then they get nervous, and then everybody's nervous.
Stimming also shows up in her work. Shake It Off, one of her most popular songs ever, is about stimming, moving your body to ground yourself and recover when you're dysregulated by the haters, the heartbreakers,
The liars and the dirty, dirty cheats of the world.
There are some quirks in the way Taylor moves, as people have noticed. She has hypermobile joints, a sign of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a connective tissue disorder, which studies show is more common among autistics. It may also be the reason for the unusual way she holds a pen.
She holds her pencil stabilized between her pointer and middle finger. This grasp is really popular for people with hypermobility or low muscle tone because it gives them extra stability.
Can you show me a really cool or bizarre talent?
Okay, I'm well aware that this is not a talent, but this is like the only thing that I can do. I have double jointed elbows, so.
No. Oh man.
Yeah, they're weird.
They're a little bit weird.
Yeah.
What's something you can't do?
I can't do a cartwheel or a handstand.
As Taylor has acknowledged, she's not known for being the best dancer, which reflects a common autistic trait called dyspraxia, a lack of physical coordination. But Taylor loves to move and dance anyway, and even goes against the grain when no one else is dancing.
I think it's so cool that you're at this award show and there's so many cool artists up on stage and they're performing their songs. It's like you're at the best concert ever. But you're sitting there and you're in the front row of this award show and every artist is sitting there like this. Like, as if they're bored by it. I just decided I would have fun with it. So I'm always like up and dancing. And I'm really tall and lanky, so I look a little bit like a baby giraffe learning how to walk. So there would be all over the internet, it was like, Taylor Swift looks awkward when she dances. And so the way I handle that now, like that criticism, is I wrote a song called Shake It Off. I knew that I wanted to do an entire music video of me awkwardly badly dancing. Just like, I think that if you learn to laugh at certain things, yeah, I do dance awkwardly, and I'm having more fun than you.
Taylor's music video for Delicate also seems to reflect her urge to stim, dance awkwardly, and generally just be weird without fear of judgment. The video starts off with Taylor seeming exhausted as she performs for the press and fans. And when she gets a moment to herself, she starts making weird faces in the mirror, another form of stimming which she's been seen doing in real life. Then she discovers that opening a magic note has made her invisible, freeing her to express her pure, unfiltered self right in front of the people she normally feels pressured to hide from.
I'm not saying that Taylor Swift is autistic, but if she was, Delicate would be a great example of that.
music video where she feels like she can finally dance and sing the way she wants to, weirdly, awkwardly, with no one looking.
When there's a conductor stand and you have the opportunity to stand on it and do this, shouldn't you do it? Like, shouldn't we do this if we have an opportunity to? Isn't that what life's all about? Doing this when you can?
Ah. See it just... That was a good one.
Taylor also seems to enjoy visual stems, like watching paper fall, for example. The cover of her album Midnights features Taylor playing with a lighter, which is a common tactile and visual stem. Taylor's autistic level of attunement to visuals and other sensory experiences comes through in her music and how she presents it. She seems particularly attuned to color and often communicates emotions through color in her songwriting. One well-known example of this is the song Red.
Like the colors in autumn so bright, just before they lose it all. Losing him was blue like I never known. Missing him was dark gray all alone. Loving him was red.
10 years later, Taylor released Maroon, a follow-up to Red, where she used changes in colors to communicate how her feelings about the relationship had changed. Understanding these kinds of intricacies woven throughout her music, with the language of color as a recurring motif, rewards fans for paying close attention.
Red as a color is vibrant and passionate and very overwhelming almost. But maroon, oh my god, it is darker. It's got that. It's like it's
got a
almost
depth.
like blood.
Yes.
You
Even
don't
the way-
need to know Red,
No.
the song,
To
to
enjoy-
understand and enjoy maroon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then when you do know it, it adds so much more to it.
Taylor has made an art form out of coordinating her outfits with her album covers. We've seen it with Reputation, Lover, and Midnight.
Taylor's intense focus on color extends to the ways she organizes her work into systems, another very autistic behavior. Her record-breaking Eras tour, which incorporated color in striking ways, was structured in a system of visually distinct eras, basically one era for each album. This structure was first represented visually with the Lover House, featured in her Lover music video in 2019. In a very autistically satisfying design, the house neatly compartmentalizes each era in a room with its own color. Taylor likes to organize her music in other ways as well, like theme-based playlists of her songs she publishes. This tendency to put things into a structure is a key autistic behavior, most stereotypically recognized in boys who line up their toys. But this trait can manifest in a lot of other ways that tend to go overlooked, especially in people who aren't cisgendered boys.
If you look at the lined up cars, you might well think, yes, that's quite autistic. But then you look at the cuddly toys lined up, and your first response, it might be, how sweet. Maybe she, making an assumption, maybe she's going to play school and pretend to teach them. And then that doesn't look autistic at all. But in fact, they're the same behaviors. We're just bringing a sort of gendered lens to them.
I like things to be neat and
Me too.
organized. People are kind of weirded out by it because they're like, well, artists are supposed to be disorganized and like disheveled and messy and artsy. But for me, like when it comes to like putting things together, like it needs to be organized.
Do you have to have the jars facing forward in the cupboards and stuff in the fridge?
It's not really that bad. It's not like that. It's just more of like structure of just general structure.
Structure.
She's like, how can I write songs if I'm not organized? Yes.
We love our organization.
The autistic urge to create structure might come from a need to find stability in a world that can often feel overwhelmingly uncertain and anxiety-inducing.
I worry about like everything, like everything. Future, past, present, where's this all going? What am I gonna feel like in 20 years? What about in 28 years? What's my life gonna be like? Where am I gonna live?
In part 2, coming up on Neurospicy, we'll take a closer look at those kinds of struggles Taylor has felt throughout her life, like alienation and being an outsider.
I could be sitting in the front row at an award show and I still don't feel like a cool kid.
We'll dive deeper into the role autism might play in her songwriting, her relationships, and her ability to perform on such a massive scale. If you don't want to miss it, be sure to subscribe, and thanks for watching.